After my mom spammed Plagiarist on my book launch posts, and my brother made a video mocking my trauma, I was dropped from my own signing. Then a best-selling author read my story and blew everything up for me in the best way. I was standing in the back hallway of the indie bookstore in Portland, Oregon, staring at the email on my phone like it was some kind of sick joke. Subject: we need to cancel today's signing. Too many threats. Safety concerns. My own book launch, my own name on the posters, and they were telling me not to come. I could hear the crowd outside, soft chatter, shelves being shifted, someone testing the mic, but none of it mattered because apparently showing up at my own signing was now considered dangerous. And the worst part was knowing exactly who caused this whole mess. My mother, my brother, my entire family. 48 hours earlier, I'd posted the official invite for my memoir launch, something I'd worked on for 4 years, something that had nearly broken me to write. I expected awkward silence from them, maybe a passive-aggressive text or two. Instead, my mom took to every platform like she'd been hired to run a smear campaign. Plagiarist. Just that one word, over and over. On every post I made, on the bookstore's announcement, on the publisher's ad. Then she made sure to reply to anyone who commented with supportive words, saying, "She steals stories. She always has." My brother jumped in next, posting a 26-minute YouTube video titled, "My Sister's Lies, The Truth About Her Fake Trauma Memoir." He used a thumbnail of me crying during a live stream last year, cropped, zoomed in, badly lit, and added a cartoon speech bubble saying, "Buy my bullshit." He laughed in the video. Full belly laughs. He read passages from my book, the hardest ones, the ones about the emotional abuse I grew up with, and delivered them in a mocking voice, pausing every few lines to say something like, "She seriously expects you to believe this." My aunt and 2 cousins shared the video everywhere. Comment sections turned into bonfires. Then my mother made a Facebook post telling people to boycott the book because I had fabricated trauma for profit. She wrote, "She's exploiting our family for attention and money. None of this happened, do not support her." My publisher tried to stay calm at first. They told me online negativity was normal, but then came the threats. Fake accounts. Comments saying they'd show up and expose me. Someone DM'd the store claiming they'd make a scene big enough to shut the event down. That's when the bookstore got nervous. That's when the publisher decided it was best for everyone if I didn't attend. Best for everyone except the author, I guess. So there I was, in a hallway that smelled like old cardboard and lemon cleaner. The signing table's already set. A stack of my books sitting untouched like abandoned furniture. My hands were shaking, and I felt sick, like I was 14 again, being called a liar in my own house for admitting I was hurting. The manager poked her head in and whispered, "I'm so sorry, really. Maybe you could do a virtual event instead." I nodded because it was all I could do without crying in front of her. I almost walked out. I almost quit writing altogether. I almost convinced myself that maybe my family was right, that maybe I did exaggerate, maybe I was the problem, maybe I should be ashamed. But then something happened less than an hour later, something I still can't fully believe. Because right when I was about to delete everything, my author pages, my posts, my career, I got a message that flipped the entire situation on its head. A message from a best-selling author, one I had admired since I was a teenager, and what they said made my heart stop. I should probably explain why my family went nuclear the second my book started getting attention. Because this didn't come out of nowhere. It's the kind of thing that builds over a lifetime, slow, quiet, corrosive, until one day it snaps. I grew up in Salem, Oregon, in a house where truth didn't matter nearly as much as appearance. My mother cared about 2 things, how she looked to other people, and how useful everyone around her could be in maintaining that image. She was the type who hosted elaborate holiday dinners, but berated us for hours beforehand because the mashed potatoes were embarrassing. My dad wasn't around, he left when I was 9, but even when he was there, he never stood up to her. So it was mostly just me, my younger brother Alex, and her anger filling every room. Alex learned early how to survive, agree with her, praise her, parrot her version of reality. He figured out the reward system fast, be the good kid, get privileges, challenge her, get punished. And I was never good at lying, or pretending, or saying, "You're right," when she absolutely wasn't. So she labeled me the dramatic one, the sensitive one, the problem, Anytime I cried, she'd say, "Stop exaggerating." Anytime I told her something hurtful, she'd say, "That never happened." Anytime I tried to set a boundary, she'd say, "Why are you making things up?" She trained me to doubt my own memories before I even hit middle school. When I started writing, really writing, at 16, she hated it. She said writers were attention seekers. She accused me of stealing ideas from books I hadn't even heard of. When a short story of mine got published in a school magazine, she said the teacher felt sorry for me. When I got a scholarship for a creative writing program, she said the committee only picked me because I play victim better than most. Alex followed her lead, always smirking at me like he knew something I didn't. He'd record me when I was upset just to show Mom later. He'd push my buttons intentionally, then play innocent while she came at me with accusations. I moved out at 19, cut contact at 23. I spent most of my 20s trying to make peace with the reality that the people who raised me simply couldn't love me in a normal way. Therapy helped. Writing helped even more. My memoir didn't start as a book. It started as private notes, just me putting the chaos into sentences so it would stop eating me alive. Over time, those notes grew into chapters. Then my therapist encouraged me to shape them into a manuscript. Then a friend pushed me to submit it. The publishing deal felt like a miracle. Not because of money, trust me, debut memoirs don't pay like people think, but because it felt like someone finally believed in me. But here's where things get complicated. I didn't use their names. I changed details. I blurred locations. I wrote the book responsibly and legally. Still, the second my family realized the memoir was about the emotional abuse I grew up with, they didn't hesitate. They didn't call me. They didn't want to talk. They went straight to public humiliation, as if punishing me for telling the truth was a reflex. That's why the message I got in that bookstore hallway felt unreal. Because the author who reached out wasn't just famous, they had a reputation for exposing toxic families. They had millions of readers. And they told me something about my memoir that made my knees shake. The message came from an author I'd worshipped since college, someone whose books sat on my nightstand like talismans. I won't use their name here, but if you've walked into a Target book aisle in the past 5 years, you've seen their face on a display. Their DM was short, direct, and terrifyingly kind. "I saw what's happening. I've read your book. It's important. Don't let them bury it. Call me." They included a number. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. I kept rereading the message like it was going to vanish if I blinked. Before I could decide whether to call, the bookstore manager returned and told me they were officially locking the front doors. Someone had called the store anonymously and said, "If she's there, there will be consequences." I had to leave through the back exit like a criminal. By the time I got to my car, my mom's smear posts had gone viral in the worst possible way. A TikTok account that specialized in family drama commentary had already picked up the story, using clips from my brother's YouTube video. The comments were brutal, nothing factual, nothing fair, just strangers picking sides like it was entertainment. When I finally worked up the courage to call the best-selling author, they answered on the first ring. Their voice was calm, firm, almost surgical. "I believe you," they said. "I know exactly what a family like that does when someone speaks up." I started crying before I could even respond. They didn't rush me, didn't ask for details. They just said, "Listen, your publisher is terrified of bad press. But bad press is not the same as bad publicity. What's happening to you isn't the end, it's the beginning. I've been through this. You are not alone." That sentence, "You are not alone," broke something open in me. Then they told me something I never expected. "Your book will survive this. In fact, it's about to explode. But you need to do exactly what I say next." My stomach clenched, because if I had learned anything from my childhood, it's that instructions can be weapons. But this felt different, grounded, protective. They told me to lie low for 24 hours, no responses, no comments, no posts. "Let them spin themselves out," they said. "Then we take control." I spent the rest of the day hiding in my apartment, trying to pretend I couldn't hear the constant stream of notifications. News outlets were beginning to pick up the story, not accurately, of course. Articles framed it as author's family accuses her of lying in memoir, which only fed the narrative that my trauma was up for debate. Meanwhile, Alex doubled down. He posted a second video where he sat with my mother on camera. Him, grinning like this was the best day of his life. My mother, perfectly poised, delivering lines she'd clearly rehearsed. "She's always been dramatic," she said. "She lies for attention. She manipulates people into feeling sorry for her. We never abused her. She made it all up." I watched it alone on my couch, hands gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. It was like reliving my entire childhood in HD. Later that night, my publisher emailed me asking if I'd consider postponing the release until the controversy settled. They wanted me silent, invisible, palatable. But the best-selling author texted me again, "Do not agree to anything. Big things are shifting behind the scenes." I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know whether to hope or panic. All I knew was that in less than 24 hours, my life had blown apart in full view of the internet. And somehow, something even bigger was brewing. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that the first major twist was coming faster than I expected. And it involved the person I least suspected. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay on my couch in the dark, scrolling, watching my own life cave in like a building with its beams kicked out. By morning, the internet had split into two armies, people defending me, and people calling me everything from manipulator to fraud. Booktube channels I'd never heard of were dissecting my childhood like it was a murder case. And then, right as I was about to turn my phone off for the day, I got an email from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. My cousin Mia, the only person in my family who ever showed an ounce of compassion. We weren't close anymore, but we weren't enemies either. She moved to Arizona 5 years ago to get away from the chaos, and we hadn't really talked since. Her subject line hit me like a punch. "You need to know the truth before it gets worse." I opened it immediately. She wrote fast, breathless paragraphs, like she'd been carrying the words around for too long. The short version: my family hadn't just reacted to the book. They hadn't just panicked or gotten scared of what people would think. They'd planned the entire smear campaign, weeks before my memoir release. It wasn't a spontaneous meltdown. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't even personal in the way I thought. They had organized it, coordinated it, step by step. Mia said she'd heard them talking during a barbecue at my aunt's house a month earlier. She hadn't said anything then because she didn't know how real it was. She thought they were ranting, blowing off steam. But after seeing the explosion online, she realized they'd followed through exactly as discussed. She told me they had drawn up a list of accounts to comment from written-out talking points to discredit me, planned my mother's public statement. Weeks in advance, agreed to release Alex's video the same day my publisher started running ads chosen phrases like plagiarist and liar, because they test well as clickable accusations, as if my life was some marketing campaign for them. But the part that made me physically sick was this: they had a printed copy of my memoir long before publication, because someone inside my publisher leaked it to them. My hands went numb reading that line. Because only 4 people had access to my full manuscript before it went to print: my editor, the legal reviewer, my publicist, and my ex-best friend, Tessa. The one person I'd trusted with early drafts. The one person who used to come to my apartment with wine and Thai takeout to cheer me on when I doubted myself. The one person who attended my therapy graduation with me. Tessa worked at the publishing house. She was the assistant to my editor, but she'd assured me she wasn't involved in my book's workflow. Apparently, she was involved enough to hand a full PDF to my mother during a friendly catch-up lunch. I stared at Mia's email for a long time, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I thought I knew betrayal. I thought my family was already the worst of it. But this was something deeper, colder, calculated in a way that didn't feel human. My family didn't just try to destroy my reputation. They recruited my closest friend to help. And according to Mia, there was one more thing I needed to know. Something she said she'd only explain over the phone. I dialed her number so fast I didn't even think. She answered on the first ring, voice shaky. "Before I say anything," she said, "you need to prepare yourself. They didn't do this out of embarrassment. They did it because of what your book might expose." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" I whispered. She took a breath. "There's something your mother has been hiding for over 20 years. And she's terrified you're about to stumble into it." I drove to a park-and-ride lot in northeast Portland because it was the only place I knew I wouldn't run into anyone. I sat in my car with the engine off, gripping the steering wheel while Mia told me everything. Her voice shook the whole time. There's something in your book, she said. Something small, almost a throwaway detail, but it scared your mother. She thinks you're about to expose something she's kept buried for decades. I racked my brain, flipping through chapters in my memory, trying to figure out what she meant. My memoir was personal, but it wasn't investigative. I didn't accuse anyone of crimes. I didn't even name my family. Finally, I asked, "What detail?" She hesitated. "You mentioned Dad leaving when you were 9, but you also mention overhearing a fight the night before he left. You wrote that you remember him yelling something like, 'I'm not covering for you anymore.'" I nodded slowly. It was just a brief memory, something foggy, something that never made sense. Mia exhaled shakily. "Your mom has always been terrified someone would remember that night the way it really happened. She thinks your book is going to make people ask questions she doesn't want answered." I pressed her. "What happened, Mia?" She went quiet. "I don't know exactly," she said. "But I know your mom paid a lot of money to keep something quiet, and I know she thought your dad might tell you when you were older. That's why she cut him out so aggressively." I leaned back in my seat, dizzy. My childhood had always felt like a puzzle missing crucial pieces. This felt like someone had just dumped a box of new pieces on the table. Then Mia told me the last part. "Your brother knows, and Tessa knows. That's why they freaked out. That's why they did all this. They're terrified the truth will come out." I didn't know whether to cry or scream. But for the first time since the meltdown began, I felt something burn through the shock. Clarity. They weren't trying to protect the family image. They were trying to protect themselves. And if that was true, then the smear campaign wasn't just cruel, it was a cover-up, a preemptive strike. When the call ended, I didn't move for a long time. I just stared through the windshield at the empty lot, feeling the weight of everything settle in my bones. Then my phone buzzed. A text from the best-selling author. "If you're ready, I have a plan." I didn't know what they meant, but I typed back immediately, "I'm ready." They called 2 minutes later. Their voice was steady, strategic, like they'd already mapped out every move. "First," they said, "do not talk to the press. Do not respond to anything online. Silence unnerves abusers more than shouting back." I nodded, even though they couldn't see me. "Second," they continued, "we're going to use their own tactics against them. They've made this public good. That means we get to use public channels too, but not recklessly, not emotionally." Precisely. They laid out the beginning of a plan, steps that felt almost surreal to hear. I was to collect every piece of harassment, every comment, every share of Alex's videos, every time my mother repeated a false claim, every proof of Tessa leaking my manuscript, document everything. "Facts," they said, "are the one thing people like your family can't fight. They only win when everything stays muddy." Then they said the part that made a shiver run down my spine. "There's a journalist I trust. Investigative, smart, not afraid of pushback. If she decides there's something deeper here, and it sounds like there is, this entire situation could turn upside down." My throat tightened. "You're talking about an exposé?" "I'm talking," they replied, "about truth finally having a megaphone." I sat up straighter. My pulse thudded in my ears. I'd spent a lifetime being told to stay quiet, to be small, to avoid making the family look bad. Now someone was offering me a way to finally tell the truth without being drowned out. But the author wasn't finished. "There's something else," they added. "Before we do anything, you need to know something I found, something about your brother. It changes the picture, dramatically." My breath caught. "What about him?" I asked. A long pause. "Let's just say," they said slowly, "the second twist is worse than the first." The author didn't ease into it. They didn't soften their tone or give me time to brace myself. They just said it straight. "Your brother has been pitching a book. Your story without you." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "What?" I whispered. "I have friends in the industry," they continued. "Someone forwarded me an email thread this morning because they recognized your name. He's been contacting agents for months, calling himself an insider with access to the real truth about your childhood. He's been selling himself as the whistleblower who will correct your lies." My vision blurred. I pressed the heel of my hand into my forehead. Alex wasn't just mocking me online. He wasn't just joining the family's smear circus. He was trying to profit off the story he said I fabricated. "You're saying he wants to write what? A counter-memoir?" I asked. "Not wants to," the author said. "Has been. He sent sample pages. I read them." My stomach flipped. I felt cold all over. "He copied your chapters," they continued. Almost word for word, same events, same memories, except he rewrote them so that every moment where he hurt you became a moment where you hurt him. I felt something inside me break. Not loudly, not violently, more like a quiet snap, like a bone giving way after years of stress. The author kept going. He framed himself as the neglected child, the scapegoat, the one who carried the burden of your emotional instability. He even wrote an entire section about being afraid of you, afraid you might fabricate something so dangerous it would ruin the family. I covered my mouth with my shaking hand. It wasn't just a lie. It was a blueprint. It was the narrative they'd been trying to force on me since I was old enough to talk. Then the author said the part that made everything click into place. He pitched it to publishers before your memoir was even announced, before your release date, before any of this drama started. The smear campaign wasn't a reaction. It was marketing for his book. I felt dizzy. My ears rang. My family hadn't united out of shock or fear. They weren't lashing out because I exposed private pain. They were setting the stage, creating a scandal big enough to sell his version. I whispered, "He used my trauma as a business launch." "He used your trauma as a business plan," the author corrected. "And your friend Tessa gave him the manuscript so he could verify details for his proposal." Their words, not mine. Everything inside me went still. The fake outrage, the videos, the posts, the threats, the timing. It was all manufactured. Carefully. Intentionally. Engineered to destroy my credibility so Alex could swoop in with the real truth. My whole childhood replayed in my mind like a movie I didn't want to watch. Every moment he smirked when I got in trouble. Every time he whispered something to my mother before she screamed at me. Every time he said, "You're imagining things," even when I wasn't. Of course he'd do this. Of course he'd weaponize my pain. Of course he'd see my story as an opportunity to step into the spotlight he'd always envied. The author's voice pulled me back. "You asked why they're panicking," they said. "It's because your book, the real one, is getting early traction. Reviewers are responding. People are talking. And now Alex realizes he can't sell his version unless yours is destroyed." I clenched my jaw. "So what do I do?" The author hesitated, then spoke with a calm, cold certainty. "You don't just defend yourself. You don't just tell your truth. You expose the real reason your family went after you. Because their cruelty wasn't personal. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't even about shame." They lowered their voice. "It was business." And just when I thought there couldn't possibly be anything worse, the author added, "And there's something else Mia hinted at. Something your mother covered up 20 years ago. Something your brother knows would end his book deal before it starts." I swallowed hard. "What is it?" "That," they said, "is what we uncover next." I met the investigative journalist 2 days later in a quiet corner booth of a diner in Southeast Portland. She had this calm, razor-sharp energy, like she already understood everything except the parts she needed me to confirm. She didn't waste time. "I've spoken to Mia," she said. "And I've contacted 2 former neighbors from your old street in Salem. Your family may not realize how many people remember pieces of that time." My heart thudded. "Pieces of what?" I whispered. She watched me carefully. "Let's go back to the night your father left, the one you vaguely mention in your book." I nodded. I barely remembered it, just yelling, slammed doors, and the feeling that something terrible had happened. "Your cousin told me your mother has lived in fear for 20 years that someone would dig into that night," the journalist continued. "So I did." She slid her notebook toward me. Line after line of dates, names, cross-checked notes. I felt sick. "Your father didn't leave because he gave up," she said quietly. "He left because your mother gave him no choice." My throat tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said, lowering her voice, "that your father tried to report her." My breath caught. "Report her for what?" She looked at me with a kind of sad certainty. "For harming you." The world tilted. I shook my head slowly, automatically, like a reflex. "No, no, my mother wasn't physically." The journalist stopped me gently. "Emotional abuse is harm. Neglect is harm. And yes, there were signs of physical incidents too, ones your father tried to document. He took you to a doctor twice. The second time, the doctor suspected something. And your mother threatened both the doctor and your father with legal action if they misinterpreted anything." I felt my chest tighten, hot and cold at once. "My father tried to get custody," I asked. She nodded. "He tried to get you out of that house, and she retaliated. Hard. She threatened to accuse him of abuse. She told neighbors he was unstable. She said he was dangerous. She weaponized your reactions, normal reactions of a child under stress, to paint him as a risk. I stared at the table, nausea rising. And he left, she added softly, because she told him she would destroy your life if he kept pushing. She told him she'd make sure you believed he abandoned you. And he knew she could. My eyes burned. Then the journalist dropped the final blow, the one that explained everything, every lie, every smear, every frantic attempt my family had made to shut me down. There is a police incident record from that night, she said. It's buried in an archive, misfiled, but it exists. Your mother called the police, not to report your father, no. She called them to preemptively claim he was dangerous. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. She continued. She did it to create a paper trail, to protect herself. She was terrified he'd expose her. That's the secret she's been guarding for 20 years. That's why she panicked when your memoir got traction. She thinks people will start digging. And if anyone digs, that record surfaces. My hands shook in my lap. And your brother knows, she added. That's why he's so ferocious about destroying your credibility. If anyone believes your version of the family history, his book doesn't sell. And if anyone looks into your childhood, his mother's paper trail unravels. Their entire narrative implodes. It hit me then, not just what they did, but who they really were. My mother wasn't outraged. She wasn't humiliated. She wasn't hurt. She was protecting herself from being exposed. She was protecting her reputation, her control, her lies. And she was willing to destroy me, completely, publicly, just to keep her past buried. There was no love in any of this. No confusion, no misunderstanding, just self-preservation. Cold, calculated, cruel to the bone. The journalist closed her notebook. You asked why your family went scorched earth on you, she said. It's simple. I looked up at her, barely breathing. Because you were never their problem, she said. You were their liability. Something in me hardened, finally, fully. And that's when I knew exactly what I had to do. The moment the journalist said the word liability, something locked into place inside me, clean, sharp, final. For the first time in my life, I wasn't scared of them. I was done surviving them. I was ready to end this. The best-selling author, the journalist, and I formed a plan. Not dramatic, not chaotic, not reactive, precise. Because people like my mother and brother thrive on noise. They hide behind confusion. They weaponize doubt, so we stripped all of that away. Step 1, documentation. I spent the next week gathering everything. Screenshots of every accusation, every repost of my brother's videos, every instance of Tessa's leak, every message, every lie, every coordinated attack. The journalist verified the timestamps, built a timeline, and filed FOIA requests for archived records tied to my father's 2 doctor visits and the police call from that night. Step 2, legal leverage. The author connected me with a publishing attorney. We drafted a cease and desist to Alex for plagiarism and defamation, so thorough he wouldn't be able to submit a grocery list without tripping legal alarms. Another went to Tessa, detailing the manuscript breach, the confidentiality violation, and the forwarding of proprietary publishing material to outside parties. We didn't send them yet, not until Step 3. Step 3. The truth goes public. On a quiet Tuesday morning at 9:12 a.m., the journalist published her article. Not a hit piece, not a smear in the opposite direction, just facts, verified, documented, chronological. A calm, devastating account of a family retaliating against a survivor to protect a secret 2 decades old. She didn't reveal every detail, only what was ethically publishable. But she did include the leaked manuscript, the coordinated smear campaign, the pre-planned talking points the book pitch Alex had shopped around the archived incident report, involving my father, the pattern of manipulation and public discrediting. Direct quotes from neighbors who remembered something bad. That night verification that no claims of plagiarism had any basis whatsoever. She gave them nowhere to hide. The article exploded within hours. Bookstagram picked it up. Book Talk devoured it. Reviewers tore into Alex's videos. People who had originally mocked me posted apologies. My publisher, who had been silent and terrified, emailed me saying, "We fully support you and deeply regret the mishandling of your event." They asked if I'd consider a bigger signing. At a larger venue, with security and a live stream. The best-selling author announced publicly they were proud to stand with a writer whose truth survived a coordinated campaign of cruelty. Sales tripled in one day. That afternoon, we sent the cease and desists. Alex deleted his videos within 20 minutes. My mother locked her Facebook. My aunt posted something vague about being misled. My brother's agent, one I didn't even know he had, wrote back saying, "We will not be pursuing representation at this time." Tessa tried calling me. I didn't answer, my attorney did. Within 48 hours, the entire family went silent. Not an apology, not an explanation, not a peep. And I didn't need one. Because the following week I walked into Powell's Books, my signing, through the front doors this time. The line wrapped around the mezzanine. People held my book like it meant something. Some told me they'd grown up in homes like mine. Some said they finally felt seen. I signed copies for 4 hours straight. And as I packed up to leave, the best-selling author, who'd come to support me, leaned over and said, "You didn't just survive them, you outgrew them." The closure hit me slow, like warmth returning to a place that had been numb for years. I don't know if I'll ever speak to my family again. I don't know if the truth of that night will ever fully come out. But I do know this: they spent years trying to silence me. They spent months trying to destroy me. And in the end, my story is the one that lived. I walked out of the bookstore into the cool Portland night and felt something settle in my chest. Freedom. And a small, quiet thought I hadn't felt in a long time: they don't get to write my story. I do. Turns out the only thing my family succeeded at was making my book a bestseller. Guess they should have coordinated a little less publicly.